Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Keystone Kapers for the Commodore 64, and I'm playing this game on a C64 full-size console. I was reading a retro magazine, and I was floored when I stumbled across this game. I'm a huge fan of Keystone Kapers for the Atari 2600, and to get a Commodore 64 version of the game is amazing. I played this game for barely 10 minutes before I decided I had to make a video. Keystone Kapers was an Activision game, but this homebrew port was released in 2019, and was a conversion created by Antonio Savona. I'll start by saying this game is pretty great. The only slight criticism I have for this one is that the Commodore 64 color palette makes some of the obstacles a little harder to identify, but overall that feels pretty minor. If this game was released in the 80s when the Commodore was popular, this game would have done very well. We get an opening splash screen like most Commodore 64 games, and then we get an intro screen. This gives us one amazing thing: the ability to select your level before you start. How great is that? Instead of having to work through all the different levels, you can go directly to the level you want. Basically, this lets you skip the easier levels if you want to jump straight into a challenge. The basics of the game are the same as in the Atari version. You're a Keystone cop racing after a hooligan in a department store. The graphics of the cop and hooligan are certainly better than the Atari version. They have a bit more detail here, and they run at about the same speed. The speed and the pacing of the game are actually really close to the Atari game. If you're a fan of that version, you're probably going to like this one. The obstacles that you have to jump and duck are the same, and they advance in the same fashion as you beat levels. First there's a bouncing ball, then there's an antique radio, then a shopping cart, and then a toy plane. Then they start changing the speed of those objects. In the 2600 version, the primary sound effects are your footsteps running along the department store and when you jump. Here, the footstep sound effects are actually kind of replaced. Instead, you get this great music track. It's a really impressive addition. The details that they have in the department store are fantastic. You can see sales counters, you can see glass cabinets and radios out on display. There are also columns decorating some of the screens, and when you run past them, you actually run behind them on screen. This makes the game just a little bit more difficult when you need to dodge obstacles, and it really works. There are also some potted plants decorating the building as well. There's a skyline outside and above the building, and the roof also has skylights. And there's also a little room at the top of the escalator when you get up to the roof. It looks great. There are some other small differences that really work well for this game. I think the big thing that stood out for me is the escalator screen. On the Atari 2600, if you're chasing the hooligan, you can't catch him on the escalator screen. If you're running, you could be right behind him. If he runs onto that escalator screen, even if you're 2 steps behind him, when you enter that screen, the hooligan has automatically teleported to the next floor and is already running in the opposite direction. In this version, you can actually catch the hooligan on the escalator screen. However, you can also get trapped here as well. When you walk up to an escalator, you're automatically going to go on the escalator. You can't run past it. And you can't jump back off the escalator once you're on it. So, the hooligan doesn't go up the escalator. He just runs to the end of the screen, that level, and then he automatically appears above. So if he is on that screen with you and he runs past the mouth of the escalator, you can't catch him until he teleports above. Because you can't run past the escalator. You go up. This means if you jump on the escalator and you reach the next level before the hooligan runs off the screen below you, he won't teleport up to the roof. He'll turn around and run back through that level, and you can't go down an escalator, only up. So you're stuck running out the clock and losing a life. Will you actually run into this phenomenon? Yes. I did it twice when I was playing. And I also did it in this footage, so pay attention. There are some additional differences as well, but they're mostly minor. It feels like you run at about the same pace as the Atari 2600 version, but when you're jumping shopping carts, the first time you encounter the carts, the slow-moving ones, you might have to jump them twice in the same screen. If you're running flat out, I found that I've had to jump once at the end of that screen to avoid getting hit. You can also run into a screen of obstacles, and the obstacles can be coming at you from behind instead of towards you. The 2600 version always had obstacles coming towards you. In here, that's not the case. They could be going in either direction. It's a really nice change. Also, you can now exist on the same screen with both the criminal and an obstacle. The Atari version would always remove the obstacle and it would just be you and the hooligan. This might make it a little harder to catch the hooligan because now you might have to dodge a ball or a shopping cart or something, but it's pretty awesome. When you start each level, there's also a pause. On the Atari, you'd beat the level and you'd immediately start on the next level and you'd be running right away. But here, you get a screen that says, "Get ready," and it lets you take a breath and then start up. It's a nice addition. When you lose, you get a game over screen and get to see Keystone Kelly, that's your character name, sitting down, dizzy. If the better graphics, the updated department store, and the music weren't enough, I'm impressed with the inclusion of all these little details. What an awesome conversion to the Commodore 64. I'm floored all around. Well, that's all I have today for Keystone Kapers for the Commodore 64. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.